So you both are free to get started. You can introduce yourselves. And like I said, I'll let people in as they join the waiting room.
Perfect. Well, we're excited to have some time just to share our story with you today. My name is Jody Graham, and I'm the Executive Director of Human Resources for Ankeny Community School District. Ankeny is kind of in the heart of Iowa. We are right outside of Des Moines, which is our capital, and I believe we are the sixth largest school district in the state of Iowa.
Oh, all right. My name is Al Nepple, and I'm the Director of Professional Learning in Leadership Development for Ankeny Schools.
So our goal today is going to, like I said earlier, just share our story with you. We're going to kind of share with you what we believe is the purpose of mentoring in our district. We kind of defined what we wanted the purpose to be. We're going to spend some time just sharing our story, how we developed our mentoring program. And then we're going to share our biggest impact resources with you. And those are pieces that we really hope you can take nuggets and bring back to your own district. And then we have some reflection questions for you to think about as you plan and think about your mentoring system or program. We revamped our mentoring program about 4 years ago. So I think what we're going to share with you as to kind of our why and what we wanted is tried and true because we've lived it for about 4 years. So can you go to the next slide for me, Al? So what we dug into first is what do we want our mentoring program to do? Like, what's its purpose? And so we decided for us in our district, it was very important that it promoted both personal and professional well-being. And that was a little bit of a shift for us. Historically, mentoring really focused on academic supports, instructional supports, curriculum supports. And we decided that given the needs of our new staff, the changing demographics of our school community, we wanted to really shift that focus to include both personal and professional well-being. We thought if we could do that, it would lead to promoting excellence in education or teaching, that it would ultimately enhance our student achievement, that it would build a supportive environment where, regardless of the stage of your career or what level of teacher you were coming into Ankeny, you would feel that supportive environment. And then ultimately, we wanted to increase retention of our beginning year teachers. So we went to the drawing board. We started examining our data. We started determining what voices do we need to be at the table. We created a committee, a planning committee that included instructional coaches, administrators who are on the front lines of working with our teachers. Al was part of that committee from an academic and professional development standpoint. I was part of the committee because at that point, we were trying to figure out, where did mentoring live? Historically, it had lived in our academic services department. And we were trying to figure out, should that function be moved to human resources? Should that be a partnership? What did it need to look like? Once we got all of those voices around the table, we just started studying. We studied, what does our data say? What does research say? What's the difference between orientation, onboarding, and mentoring? We believed we had a lot of overlap and we weren't very clear on what those three parts were for a new employee. We did a lot of reading and research on the phases that first year teachers go through. We identified supports we already had existing in our system. So what things did we not need to recreate, but what did we need to maybe pull in terms of resources or tweak how they were supporting teachers. Then we started defining roles and responsibilities. There was a lot of misunderstanding and overlap in roles and responsibilities. So we dug into and really defined roles and responsibilities. And we'll share these resources with you as we go through our presentation. We started building learning progressions, and that took an incredible amount of time and We really leaned on our instructional coaches to help do the majority of that work. We started matching the learning progressions to those phases that teachers go through so that we can match when did we need to be a little heavier on social emotional support? When did we really need to focus on academic and pedagogical support? Then we rolled out the change, and then we monitored for progress. We've made tweaks throughout the last 4 years. And I would tell you, we still continue to monitor and make adjustments. And we can give you some examples of some modifications we've had to make just this year. So a couple other things that we had to do in order to kind of have a full wraparound of this change. We built a job description for our mentor. We were very heavy on direct support to mentees, but we really lacked instructional and just job coaching for the mentor. So we shifted our resources to really looking at what professional development and leadership development do we need to provide for the mentor, because the mentor then is leading the new teachers or the mentees through our mentoring program. And prior to that, we had all of these people kind of just going in on support for the mentee, and they had so many things coming at them and not a real direction. So we backed off that support and decided, how are we building capacity for teacher leaders who want to be mentors? And then I have a link in here. I'm going to have you click on the clearly defined roles of support. So this was a document that we created. This was one of our first documents as a team. And we spent a lot of time defining, what do we mean by physical support? What do we mean when we say emotional support, instructional support, and institutional support? We thought it was very important that we clearly defined what that meant, so that the folks in different roles and responsibilities who are responsible for different components of that support had clarity on that as well. As I mentioned earlier, we really focus on those phases of the first year of a teacher's kind of lifespan, if you will, that first year. And then we dug in and matched support and our learning progressions to those stages. And then on the second page of this, you'll see this is where we started defining roles and responsibilities. We believe that mentoring is not one person's job. We believe that the mentor plays a role, the building administrators play a role, our instructional coaches play a role, and the team PLC plays a role. And that could be a grade level PLC, it could be a content PLC, it could be both. And so we really defined, what is your role in mentoring? And so this was a huge document for us, and we provided some training to our principals. Our mentoring team provided a lot of training with OWL support to instructional coaches. I would tell you, we still are struggling with that PLC support and the accountability of that PLC in this kind of partnership or collaboration, if you will. And so this is where that learning and tweaks still comes into play, because we still have work to do, even though we have defined these. Al, do you want to add anything? Al works extremely closely with our instructional coaches, so he might have a little bit to add in here too.
Yeah, and I think it's critical to mention that while these different groups, mentor, administrator, coach, PLC, probably were offering supports, it wasn't a coordinated support. To Jody's words from earlier, it was a lot of different things coming at the mentor. So in the learning progressions, which could be a whole nother session in itself, it times those out. When does a principal need to step in? When does a coach need to step in? When is it heavy on the mentor, or when should the PLC team really step in? And we have that timed out based on the time of the year and what's going on in the life of a new teacher.
I think one of the things we realized through our discovery is that one person cannot serve all the needs of a new teacher. They're coming with different strategies and tools in their toolbox, different experiences, different levels of confidence. Um, so when we looked at these roles and responsibilities, we really wanted instructional coaches to be the instructional experts. We wanted principals to be the evaluator experts, the ones that were providing the expectations and helping them with goal setting and helping them, with the just navigating their role in as a teacher. And we wanted mentors to really focus on being that social emotional support, because we can't expect our mentors to be experts in instruction and pedagogy and evaluation and license transition, but we wanted them to provide that social emotional support that our new teachers could lean on. And we have extremely talented mentors who are instructional experts, so they can give that input and that coaching, and it's very fluid, but we wanted to give people permission to be experts in the area in which they were truly experts in. And then lastly, we developed some resources. And I would say this has really advanced significantly from where we were at 4 years ago. We developed a mentor team, and that's been a little bit, we actually had to tweak that a little bit going into the end of this year and next year, just based on some financial situations for the district. We still have a mentor team. We've just had to trim it down a little bit. Nonetheless, I don't have any hesitation that the supports we've put in place will be impacted because we've trimmed that team a little bit. They provide a lot of anchor resources. They do a newsletter that's our Mentoring Matters. They provide the professional development to our mentors. They're out in buildings checking on both mentors and mentees. They provide some social networking for our mentees so that they're getting, that social aspect of the district, not just that academic aspect in their building. We've partnered in Iowa. We have what's called Iowa Education Agencies, or AEAs. They have a very strong mentor network in Iowa as part of a state requirement. All new teachers have to do 2 years of mentoring. So there's a lot of state resources and support. I would tell you that I think our mentor specialists in neighbor districts have started really just collaborating more as a mentor network outside of that agency as well. I know just this week when I was meeting with our mentor specialist, he was sharing 6 or 7 different school districts that he connects with, and they talk about strategies that they're using. Like I said, we've shared with you that defined roles and responsibilities. We're constantly revisiting that with our principals. We actually have a meeting coming up tomorrow just to finalize our pre-service plan, and then we'll talk about how we will be rolling that out with our administrators. We have a resource page. We went away from a one-on-one mentoring that was very traditional, very classic mentoring, and we created cadres, which are small communities of support. So we have a small stipend for our mentors, and then we assign them anywhere between 2 and generally 4, sometimes 5 new teachers, or we also support new to Ankeny career teachers. So somebody might have 5 or 6 years of experience, but be transitioning to Ankeny. And we create little communities that have a like characteristic. So it could be all first year teachers, all second year teachers, could be all family consumer science teachers, all special ed teachers, but there's a like characteristic. And we wanted to create this small community of support as a network, because again, it's not just the mentor's responsibility for that community and that social emotional connection, but as you get to know 3 or 4 other people, you become a network for each other. So for example, we have a fantastic teacher who used to be in Al's building when he was a principal, and she regularly meets with her cadre at a coffee shop. and they sit around and they're talking about, I had this really difficult parent conversation. This is how I handled it. Have any of you had that? And they're talking through, going through this situation with each other. And we just feel that there's so much value in that community of support versus just one on one. And then we have done a significant amount of work with mentor leader development. And this is really Al's expertise. Al leads our professional development and our teacher leadership program. Again, jump in here, Al, but really have shifted a lot of resources and training focuses on how are we developing leaders in our district?
Yeah,
And
and I think part of our work is really focused on, I like to say, developing some of the mentor skills that are coach-like,
mhm.
asking high-quality questions, obviously focusing on listening when they're with their mentee to really try to hone in on what is the mentee trying to share, what are they currently wrestling with, and then asking questions, not necessarily slipping directly into giving answers, and helping that mentee really kind of come to a conclusion or come to their own thoughts about how they can solve some of the things they're either struggling with, or a person to truly bounce things off of. And in doing that, we've really taken our mentors through a lot of the similar things we do with our instructional coaches.
Yeah, I think that's been really powerful, just building their capacity as a leader and helping them understand how they can support their new colleagues. Um, I think we have a significant amount of mentors who return year after year, which tells me that they enjoy what they're doing and that they are getting their own leadership bucket filled and they feel like they're giving back to the profession as well. Lastly, we try to spend time checking in with those various stakeholder groups to get feedback. Our mentor specialist does a great job with surveys, and they did some one on one meetings this spring with mentors and mentees. One of our goals going into next year is to just really ensure we're getting strong feedback from principals, instructional coaches. Al and I were both building principals, and we both just have a strong belief in getting feedback from those who are in that front line, so that when we're over here in district office, we have real data that we're making decisions off of. And then lastly, just getting in and observing, not only just classroom observations with our new teachers, but also observing those mentor cadres and giving feedback and providing support. And again, just adding layers of making sure people's needs are taken care of.
All right. So in this next segment, and Jody dove into this a little bit, and actually the attachment, the handout that we went through, has it really articulated at a deeper level. But when we think about these four types of support, again, that physical, emotional, institutional, or excuse me, instructional and institutional, we really think about how does the mentor go about supporting all that? Well, the truth is, the mentor, it's not their sole job. That's the beauty of this. And when we think about each one of these four types of support, again, as I said earlier, it might be needed more at a certain time of the year, or it might be more relevant at a certain time of the year. And so, what the mentor does is they help to identify for the mentee, the new teacher, who's the best person to support you in this area. It might be the mentor themselves, or they might pass it off to an instructional coach. Teachers struggling to engage students in their literacy lessons. That's the time for the coach. They know that they're going to step in there. The institutional piece, the intricacies, again, within all of our buildings, we all know they have their own little environments. And so the administrator is going to step into that role as well, too. But really, we're having our mentors, and I'll come to this in my next slide. Their main focus area, honestly, is that emotional support. And we'll talk about how that looks with our mentor cadres as well, too. And so on this slide, it's another way of looking at our layers of support. And you can see the concentric circles there. And in the middle, obviously, we have the mentor. Okay. They are the person that's on the front lines right there with the new teachers. Okay. Next around that is that PLC. the next closest group to that teacher in terms of they probably meet with their PLC more than anybody in these layers as well too. And then we also have that instructional coach, obviously providing the support for high quality instruction, but also our coaches are so skilled in knowing where to support the new teacher and at the level that they're currently at, and then setting kind of a plan to get them to where they're actually performing at a higher level instructionally as well too. And our administrators next, when we get into that institutional support, again, that's that, just helping them to build professional learning networks, helping them to just continue to think from a growth mindset as well too. And going back to our PLCs, they really do a lot from helping teachers in the PLCs, as we would think with the 4 questions of a high quality PLC. A lot of that planning, the backwards planning, the assessment, examining data together, and things like that. And so maybe previously in some school districts that might have all fell to the mentor. Or maybe in your district, all of these people are still involved, but when do we know when to call them into the situation to offer their supports? And like it goes back to our learning progressions about different times of the years when the different supports are really needed. And so by doing that and by articulating the purpose and the role of each of these different 4 layers, I think it helps our new teachers when they come in. We all know they come into a whirlwind when they enter a district, and even for some of our what we call new to Ankeny, our veteran staff members that join our school district. Um, Knowing that they have this level of support really, I think, offers just an opportunity for them to feel completely supported. And we get some of that in our exit survey feedback that our new teachers feel extremely supportive as we onboard them, but not only that, but through those first 2 years for all of our initial license. We also offer mentors for a full year for all of our new to Ankeny teachers. That's our veteran group as well. And so
And
when we
Al,
break down, yeah, go ahead,
do you
Jody.
mind going back one
Yep.
to that slide? As I shared with you, I think the biggest area of struggle for us has been that PLC. We get direct time with administrators. Al gets direct time with instructional coaches. We build in direct time with the mentors. Our biggest hiccup in our program development is how we get to our PLCs. And we've been trying to do that through our building administrators. But one of the things we're seeing on reasons for exiting the district is some dysfunction in PLCs or just that lack of camaraderie support. And it's really not, I would say, less with new to the profession teachers and more with veteran teachers. So this is where that partnership between HR and our academic services team, and particularly Al, has been so valuable. Al has brought in the PLC conference for all of our staff. So in August, all of our teachers will attend the PLC conference. And so I think that's just a really great example of us just really recognizing the need to find supports and learning opportunities to really help our PLCs, because I think it's just our weakest spot right now in figuring out how to maximize that capacity and how to ensure the PLC understands the magnitude of their impact on new teachers or new to the district teachers.
Yeah, to add to that, Jody, and obviously Jody and I talk about this a lot together, and that's the connection in our roles. And if you're here today on this call attending this conference, you would agree with this. We really are trying to stress that it's everybody's job on teacher retention. And I think sometimes our teacher PLCs forget about that a little bit. And so when I have those conversations with a PLC that maybe is frustrated that they've had turnover within their team, they have an incredible role in maybe reducing that turnover within their PLC. And so to Jody's point, we're trying, but we still have work to do there. And I think the more we spread that message that, when we get everybody on board and everybody's working towards not only the onboarding, but supporting while they're here, that's only going to support better teacher retention as well, too. All right. Jody had talked about our cadres, and this is just another way to look at this. And so when you see on the left, it says maybe, you have a mentor leader that, as she talked about, if you're a mentor leader and you're supporting initial license teachers in the state of Iowa, we have initial license for 2 years. You could have anywhere 2, 3, 4, 5 of those initial licensed teachers that you're supporting, um, because they do have something in common. And that's kind of the beauty of that. And that cadre approach just creates kind of a little community. And when it goes well, it goes really well because not only do they become a community, they almost become friends. They have created now a professional network beyond even their own building in a lot of cases. And I think the thing that I would call out the most on this slide is the last bullet, that the mentor and mentee might not even be at the same building. That potentially raises eyebrows when Jody and I talk about this with people from other districts. And it was a shift for us as well too. But I would tell you, we also have some data on some of our mentees feel pretty free to engage in some of those honest conversations when it's a mentor that's maybe not directly in the PLC, maybe not directly in the building. They love their job, they love the district, but they just have some things on their mind that they're willing to share with that true kind of life mentor along the side that they're more willing to do. And I wouldn't say that's always the case that it has to be somebody outside of the building, but it does work as well too. And we have evidence of success stories where they really, formulate some really good bonds across our school district. And for me, and some of you might be from even larger districts, it's kind of I often call this, we just need to shrink our district in terms of we're large, but we can still be a small community at the same time. Jody, I don't know if you'd add anything else to this slide.
No, I would just echo what Al said. This is probably the thing we got the most pushback on from our building principals, actually, not from our staff and not from our mentees. To Al's point, they love it, but our building principals, from just a very traditional standpoint, really struggled with this. And I laugh because I still probably get 1 or 2 principals a year. They're like, can you make an exception? I really want this one person from this PLC to be that one-on-one mentor. And we have had a pilot this year in one of our high schools where they had some significant turnover in very hard to fill content areas, particularly in modern language and industrial technology and family consumer science. And so we piloted both the mentee had to be in the cadre, but then who would be kind of that content expert at the building that would be a layer of support between the mentor and the instructional coach. So we did pilot that and are trying to listen to feedback, but we're pretty hardcore. We believe in that sense of community. We believe in developing a professional learning network. And to Al's point, so many teachers only are traditionally the mentor is in the PLC, it's in the hallway. And we just believe in expanding that out and giving them a variety of contacts throughout the district to connect with.
Again, I think it goes back to this slide again. We know all these people have a role here, and we just need to be even more intentional in this. Our instructional coaches, they know, and one of the first things we share with our new teachers, new to Ankeny teachers, is that you will be working with an instructional coach. That's just part of the culture. And I would say that's probably similar in other school districts too. But there's a relationship, a bond that's formed there as well too, as part of the onboarding. And it's just another layer of support in our 4 different layers that just works really well together. I know we have a small audience here, but there's a couple of things I wanted you to think about here. I kind of did a 3, 2, 1. And so when you think about our presentation, and if you have an opportunity to maybe watch this in the future, what are 3 key ideas or takeaways from our mentoring program that are maybe new to you or different, or maybe you haven't heard before? And then what might be two implications of our mentoring? Jody's talked about one of those implications, and that is we still need to develop and nurture and empower our PLCs to take a greater role. That's one of them for us. You might see some other implications depending on the size of your district. And then one question you still have about our mentoring program. Jody mentioned that we continue to reconsider and tweak and make small adjustments. And one of the small adjustments is that in some cases, we purposely make that cadre a little bit smaller.
Mhm.
And we can do that because through our mentoring team, our mentoring specialists, we can really just decide when we're going to target that a little bit more as well too.
The only thing I would add, just from a broader perspective, so I shared with you at the very beginning, we really separated out orientation, onboarding, and mentoring. The purpose of Al and I's presentation was really focusing on mentoring. It might be helpful just to give you a glimpse of what the other two components look like in our district. So we do summer orientations, and in those orientations, we have different options throughout the summer that we invite our new staff to attend. The focus is really high level. Who is Ankeny Community School District? What do you believe? What do you value? What can I expect? What are the policies, procedures? What's the information I need to be aware of before I step into my first day? When am I going to get my email? When am I going to get access to my building? And then we spend another chunk of time on benefits. So what's my leave package? How do I get signed up for my benefits? And then Al and I, in conjunction with our mentoring specialists, work to plan our onboarding, which we call pre-service. And now you're probably much more equipped to talk through that than I am. But again, we're seeing that as the first few days of work when they're on site in our district, in our buildings. And then our mentors play a little bit of a role in that. But then at that point, the mentoring really kicks in.
Yeah, Jody, I wondered if, and I'm looking at some of the people in our audience here. I don't know if they have the ability to unmute or not, but I wondered if there was a question or two, maybe we could answer that now before I go to just the final part.
Perfect.
And I can see there is in the chat actually. Christine asks, uh, she said the cadre mentor is a new approach. Do new hires ask to be paid for the orientation that you just talked about?
The orientation is unpaid. We require the first workday for all teachers in our district is August 1st, and that's the first day of their pre-service. The orientation is a 2-hour time slot in the summer that we expect them to come in. If they can't, then we try to work with them and do a virtual one-on-one, or we hold kind of a last-minute virtual. But it's an expectation as a new employee, you come in for a couple hours in the district, and again, it's not paid.
Yeah, and then maybe Jody, maybe you could extend that into how we intentionally have a different contract for new staff as well.
Yep. So all of our new teachers are contracted 4 additional days, and our returning teachers and our special ed new to the district teachers are contracted 5, because there's some state requirements for some special ed software training and just some acclimation to our progress monitoring tools and that kind of stuff. So the onboarding or the pre-service is those extra days in the contract. And Al and I, we have so much fun working together. We've really been able to be innovative. We've created some flexible calendars for our teachers where we've given voice and choice and days that they can work, along with a combination of required days, because there's things that we believe all teachers need to be part of. We also believe that due to the role you have in the district, you might need flexibility in your calendar too. But our new teachers, we have kind of a scripted out onboarding or pre-service that they have to attend. There is some choice in the afternoons of those days that they can work in their classroom and that kind of stuff.
All right. Thank you, Christine, for dropping that into the chat as well too. And anybody's welcome to do that. The next thing that I would take us to is just something else for you to pause and reflect on. And I just want you to consider the following. And so when you see this question, how would you describe your district mentoring program in general, okay? And then I urge you to take it farther. How would a prospective teacher how would you describe it to a prospective teacher candidate? Jody and I've talked about this a lot. I would tell you as a building principal when I was still in that role, the two most common questions, and they might not surprise anybody because maybe our college prep programs are training our teachers, but two most common questions at the end of an interview from teachers that I would interview were, what's mentoring look like in Ankeny schools? And the second one was, what opportunities for growth am I going to have? Which that's my
Mhm,
passion area too. And so how do we articulate that? So when you're in that interview, do you have a good response to what
mhm,
mentoring support looks like within your district? Ours now, when they do ask that question, it's a little bit longer explanation because we want to talk about all the levels of support. And we don't want to overwhelm them, but we want to say, we got your back, we have you covered. Not only at the beginning of the year, but throughout those first couple of years as well, too. So that's one question for you to kind of think about and consider. The next question would be, what are even your current teachers? How would they describe your mentoring program? Whether they're a mentor or not, are they aware of what you do to support teachers within your district, new hires within your district? And then lastly, do you survey your new hires, your new teachers, whether it's during the first 3 months, first 6 months, after the first year, the second year, for them, how would they describe their experience going through the mentoring and induction program as well, too?
I would just add, I think it's important that regardless of where you're at in your mentoring program, you're asking yourselves these questions. These are questions we're asking, and we're 4 years into the revamp of our mentoring program. And I'll give you an example of a takeaway for us that will be one of our goals for next year. One of the things that we're really digging in and studying when we look at engagement, employee engagement, and workforce turnover is the lack of community connection. So I think we've done a really nice job of building community connection within Ankeny schools. A next step for us and a goal for our HR strategic plan and our mentor specialists is how we can partner with the Ankeny community to build connections for our new staff. And so there's a lot of research out there showing that in order for employees to stay in their job and in their community, they not only need to feel connected to their work, but they need to have a sense of community outside of work. And so that will be a big area we'll take on next year in studying and trying to implement those community connections. So, for example, our mentor specialist, I was just talking with him about this earlier this week. He's very big into bike races, triathlons and stuff. And so one of the things is like, if you were new to Ankeny and that was your passion or your interest, Ankeny has a ton of trails, a ton of races. How could we build some connections and bring that to that new teacher to really help with that social emotional just well-being in terms of a human, an employee and a citizen of the community. And so I think to Al's reflection questions, like we have to ask ourselves this all the time. What is our feedback telling us? How do we need to make program changes to meet the needs of our employees?
Yeah, and I was thinking of one last thing here that I think Jody has really done a really good job with, and we're fortunate that both of us sometimes get to have an audience with the building principals directly, or even associate principals and stuff. And that is Jody's done a really nice job of keeping the employee life cycle graphic and what that means in front of our principals to know that we do have to continue to monitor how they're doing throughout their entire experience in
Mhm,
Ankeny schools. And again, it's kind of that it's everybody's responsibility type approach
mhm,
because it's just it's we want to keep the good people that we're lucky to attract. We just want them to be here, and we want them to be a part of Ankeny schools for a long time. But lastly, we just if there were any additional questions, we have our contact information up there for you as well. Emily, you obviously know Jody, and you have my contact information in case anybody reaches out after the fact as well too.
Thank you both so much. So at this time, if there are any additional questions, feel free to put them in the chat. You can also unmute and share your thoughts out loud. A few minutes and see if any pop up. Alrighty, it doesn't look like it. So thank you, Jody. Thank you, Al, so much for sharing your time. I hope you both have a wonderful rest of your day and happy Friday tomorrow as well. And Al, once again, congratulations on retirement. We hope to still see you in Seattle come October, but I understand if you're doing something fun elsewhere, I get it.
Well, you never know. Part of my job is going to conferences to find keynote speakers and things like that. Part of my new job. So.
There you go. Well, I mean, ASPA is the perfect place for that. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today for our virtual onboarding orientation and mentoring summit. Be on the lookout for an email next week with access to the recordings as well as the continued education codes through SHRM, HRCI, and PHCLE. And if you are interested in any other events with ASPA, if you go to aspa.org under the events tab and past events, you'll see all sorts of things lined up for the rest of 2024, including our Personnel Administrator Bootcamp this June in Charlotte, North Carolina. So we hope to see some of you there, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Emily.